July 4, 1776. A date inked onto parchment, carried by trembling hands, and hurled like a thunderclap across an empire. On this day, in a sweltering hall in Philadelphia, a declaration was born not merely of independence, but of defiance, vision, and the conviction that ordinary people could shape the destiny of nations. Yet no revolution begins with signatures. It begins with pressure, quiet at first, like steam beneath iron, building slowly across years of strained loyalty. Long before the ink dried, a different sound filled the colonies, the murmur of frustration. British troops marching through city streets. Newspaper broadsides accusing Parliament of tyranny. Merchants refusing to unload taxed goods. Tavern tables whispering rebellion long before anyone dared name it. By the early 1770s, tension seeped into daily life. Farmers, printers, blacksmiths, sailors, men and women who had never held power felt the weight of decisions made across an ocean. The Stamp Act. The Townshend Acts. The Tea Act. Each one a reminder that the colonists' world was governed by those who had never stepped foot on their soil. The air felt thick with a kind of quiet dread, the sense that something was about to crack. And then, in Boston, it did. Crowds gathered under torchlight, boots crunching on frozen earth, voices rising in anger. A scuffle, a shout, a command lost to confusion, and suddenly the sharp crack of muskets split the night. When the smoke cleared, bodies lay on the snow, the Boston Massacre. The city trembled, but it also awakened. Fear turned to fury. Fury became resolve. Each funeral procession felt like a promise that the story was not over. The years that followed unfolded with accelerating momentum. The Boston Tea Party sent crates crashing into dark water, a symbolic rebellion echoing across the colonies. Parliament's retaliation, the coercive acts, tightened the grip further. But instead of surrender, the colonies gathered. Delegates arrived for the First Continental Congress, carrying letters, grievances, hopes, and the fragile belief that unity might hold. War, however, does not wait for paperwork. In April 1775, on the quiet green of Lexington, British soldiers faced a line of colonists who called themselves militia but stood with the stubbornness of men defending home. No one knows who fired the first shot, but when it came, it tore through more than morning air. It ripped open the American Revolution. From Concord Bridge to the cobbled streets of Boston, the echoes rolled across New England. Ragtag farmers would soon transform into the Continental Army, and from amidst them emerged a figure whose presence seemed carved from the very spirit of rebellion, George Washington. Tall, solemn, resolute. A man burdened not with ambition, but responsibility. He led not from comfort, but from the front, sharing cold nights, thin rations, and fading hope with his men. The conflict deepened. Cities burned. Families fled. The British Navy choked ports. Yet through the despair, moments of defiance glimmered, small, human stories woven into the grand narrative. A young woman loading her husband's musket after he fell. A printer risking prison to circulate radical essays. A runaway enslaved man escaping to fight for a future still uncertain. Each act, however small, pushed the revolution forward. Then came Trenton. Christmas night, 1776. Bitter wind slicing across the Delaware River. Washington's army, exhausted and half-starved, rode through sheets of ice under cover of darkness. The odds were absurd. The stakes unbearable. Yet the attack succeeded, swift, unexpected, decisive. A spark in the dead of winter. A reminder that the revolution still breathed. Foreign powers began to take notice. France, watching Britain struggle, made a choice that would tilt the balance of the world. Their ships, soldiers, and gold arrived like a tide turning at last. But final victory would demand one more reckoning: Yorktown. The siege was slow, suffocating, inevitable. British General Cornwallis found himself trapped, hemmed in by Washington's forces on land and French fleets at sea. For days, artillery thundered, shaking earth, walls, and certainty. And then, in a quiet that felt heavier than gunfire, a white flag emerged. The war, though not officially ended, had reached its breaking point. The United States, no longer a collection of colonies but a nation, stood surrounded by both triumph and ruin. Farmland lay scorched. Families grieved. The economy staggered. But amid the chaos, a new political experiment took root. A republic, fragile but determined. A people suddenly responsible for shaping a world no empire had designed for them. This was the legacy of the American Revolution, not just victory, but transformation. The idea that liberty, though imperfect and incomplete, could be pursued collectively. That ordinary individuals, through perseverance and sacrifice, could tear down the most powerful empire of their age. That the future, uncertain as ever, belonged to those willing to imagine something better. And now, as we look back from centuries later, the echoes still resonate. The questions born then about freedom, justice, and identity remain with us. History does not end. It continues through the minds willing to explore it, learn from it, and carry its lessons forward. Which brings us to the present moment. If you've journeyed this far into the heart of history, consider joining a community that values curiosity and creativity as much as the revolutionaries once valued courage. Support the storytellers, creators, and educators who keep the past alive, not as dusty pages, but as living ideas that shape the world we build next. Together, we can explore more stories, uncover forgotten voices, and keep the flame of knowledge burning bright. Because history is not simply what happened. It is what we choose to understand, preserve, and pass on. And your support helps that story continue.